Today I am here to introduce you to the books that I will be reading for SPFBO 10 or SPFBox. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna and this is For Pause in a Book. I make bookish videos over here on my little corner of the internet, so if that's something that you're interested in, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. I am very late to this party. Everybody else on the team has put out these videos like a while ago. But the Amazing Readathon has taken up my entire brain space. So here we are today. Today I want to introduce the 10 books that I'm going to be reading for SPFBO 10. If you have no idea what it is, SPFBO, or Self-Published Fantasy Blog-Off, is a competition where 300 self-published fantasy books are put into a competition and we get to pick a winner. And I am going to be on Cassidy's judging team once again over at Covers with Cassidy. She is an official judge and she has asked some of us to kind of go through her initial selection. So she was given 30 books and there are 6 of us that are kind of weeding through it. We have 10 books in our individual group and I know you're thinking that math doesn't math. There are 2 of us reading each book, so that way the book has the best chance. Then the 6 of us will choose a semifinalist and then Cassidy will choose a finalist from those semifinalists. It's an interesting way of doing it. I really liked how we did it last year. It worked out really well. Unfortunately, my semifinalist was not chosen as the finalist, but that's fine. It's just really cool to be a part of it and to, like, you know, have a little bit of a voice. I'm going to be talking to you about the 10 that I'm going to be reading. I will be reading them predominantly in July, maybe a little bit into August, but this is definitely going to be my priority for the next month or so. And the way that we did this is we kind of ranked the books that we really wanted, and then Cassidy chose which ones, like, assigned each person 10 books. So we got books that we were excited about, books that we wanted to read, and ones that really intrigued us when we were looking through the initial 30. You'll probably see a little bit of a theme in mine. Basically, if anything was queer, I was like, yes, please, can I have it? And then there's some fantasy romance in here. There is some like political intrigue, and then there's also a couple of like mystery fantasies, which is definitely outside of my comfort zone, but I was so intrigued. This is in no particular order. I didn't like arrange them at all. Just kind of going down the list. So the first one is Oak King, Holly King by Sebastian Nothwell. This has 589 ratings and an average rating of 3.94. So that's actually really good. It's a high number for a self-published book. That's exciting. The cover is also so pretty. And this is a queer fantasy romance, male fantasy romance. This kind of takes place in like a Victorian, kind of like Victorian London, I think. But we have a legendary warrior of the Fey realms. He wins a tournament in the court of the Silver Wheel. The queen names him the Oak King, a figurehead destined to die in a ritual duel to invoke the change of the seasons. Strike is determined to survive, even if it means he must put his heart as well as his life in a mere mortal's hands. It sounds kind of cozy almost. I don't know if that's the vibe that we are going for. Who knows? I just saw queer fantasy romance and I was like, yes, please. Next up, we have Evil's Unlikely Assassin by Jen Wendrow. This has 188 ratings and a 4.1 as an average star rating. Again, pretty high. And this is an urban fantasy debut with a vampire who is on a mission to rejoin the human race. She's coerced into an ironclad contract by an angel with an attitude. Alexis must hunt down and assassinate at least one vampire, werewolf, or creepy crawly every night for 50 years to become human again. When a revenge-seeking bloodsucker threatens her city, Alexis must risk everything to ensure there's a humanity to return to. Since her vampire nature is her greatest weapon to defeat the monsters that threaten her friends in future, Alexis must choose to accept her inner beast or watch those she loves die. Urban fantasy is definitely something that like I used to read a lot of, and I don't necessarily read as much anymore, but this sounded really intriguing and the title just kind of like grabbed my attention. Next up, we have A Goddess Found, which is another fantasy romance by Calanth Colt. This has only 17 ratings, but a 4.18 as an average star rating. And again, this cover, stunning. And this says, the god incarnate forced into a public role he didn't seek, the mere mortal who wants a quiet life, the very public, very popular reality show that will complicate their lives. This sounds really fun. When you mix in like a reality show with a fantasy romance, this is definitely a unique premise, not something that you see very often, but it looks like we have a very like opposites attract kind of situation going on here. very excited about this one. Next up, we have The Fires of Capra by Mandy Odell. This is the first in a series, and again, stunning covers. Like, we are winning with some of these covers. This, according to some of the reviews, looks like it might be like older YA, like kind of maybe that bridge to YA to adult, which definitely is an age range that I think we need more of, because there is such a huge gap. Like, there's a chasm between YA fantasy and like epic high fantasy, and so bridging that gap is super important, and I'm really glad we're getting more books here. A lot of the reviews also say that this is a really character driven book, which like just sung to me. Okay, this is one that I am so excited about. Even before I like read the plot, I was like, yes, please. This says, I was a physician's assistant, then I became his experiment. Capra is hunted by the tigers that roam her canals at night, searching for food, and from a fever that leaves no survivors. Until me. Left with scars and an unusual change to my eyes, I hide myself in the hospital ward, tending to patients that I know will die where I had lived. I am no longer the beautiful girl that haunted the dreams of the Grand Duke Vane. No matter what he says or how he requests that I return to the palace life where I had grown up as an orphan. But I have caught the attention of another, the Jackal, a thief stealing from the nobles like some hero of tale of old. With his help, I grow strong enough to walk the canals at night, bringing hope to those who have no access to medicine. I don't know if this is a fantasy romance. It doesn't have tags as a fantasy romance, but like, who knows? Goodreads are user generated, so we never know. This one just sounds so intriguing, and when you say that it's a character driven story, that the world building is really thought out, that just speaks to my heart. Oh, and I forgot to say that The Fires of Capra has 33 ratings with an average of a 4.52. So not a ton of ratings, but I'm hoping that that just means that this book needs more attention. Next up, we have The Afterlife Experiment by Sam Weiss. This has 47 ratings and a 4.36 average. And the other person in our group that has this book has already read it and said it was really good. And so I am excited. This one immediately I was sold because it takes place in an asylum. And like, that's just fun. Not something you see every day in a fantasy novel. Our character has spent the last 7 years locked away in the Vanishing Plains psychiatric hospital. In that time, her shadow has transformed into its own entity and is growing stronger by the day, threatening to devour her mind. She calls that shadow Dread, and only her missing father knows what it is. When a fire breaks out in the asylum, Atra makes her way to freedom just in time to see an electric purple rift under the sky. Like Dread, the rift is only visible to her. This one sounds like such a unique premise. It also sounds like another book that should be very character driven, like we only have one main character that we're going to be in her head the whole time. So definitely like speaking to me on several levels. Next up, we have The Burning Fire Rises by Jeff Walker. This one actually has a 0 ratings, so that's kind of cool to like really get this book like out into the universe and get some attention on it. It was published in March of 2024, so definitely still a new release. And this is a paranormal thriller with elements of sci-fi and supernatural fantasy. Welcome to the mysterious world of Professor Dark and Miss Shadow. A FBI special agent is investigating a strange crime scene in a forest near Flint, Michigan. A large crater has been discovered with the charred remains of a group of people. It appears to be a case of spontaneous combustion. That's when he encounters Professor Dark and Miss Shadow, a couple with supernatural powers who are also investigating this strange event. Honestly, this feels like the like old school CW paranormal urban fantasy shows where we have like some sort of mystery involved. Think like the Warehouse 13 kind of shows. I don't know. Are those even CW? I don't know, but that's what I'm thinking. I could be getting like very different vibes. It could be very dark. I don't know, but that's the vibe that I'm getting out of that synopsis, so I'm hoping that it's a good time. Next up, we have A Rose Among Thorns by Ash Fitzsimmons. This has 41 ratings and an average of 4.37. This one I think is the shortest book on my list at only 187 pages, so it's actually like a novella, which I'm not complaining about. I do love a good novella sometimes. Like if it can be done well and it's succinct, I think that novellas are criminally underrated. This says, Rose Thorn should never be left unsupervised around plants. A mood. Potted things tend to die around her as if on principle. Also relatable. But when her great aunt calls and asks Rose to watch her garden nursery for a few days, Rose can hardly say no. After all, Aunt Lily is the closest thing that Rose has had to a grandmother, and the only family she has left. Aunt Lily never mentioned anything about an inspection, however. Rose is taken aback when an agent from an organization that she's never heard of arrives and panics to find Aunt Lily missing. As it turns out, Aunt Lily hasn't been entirely straight with Rose. She's not visiting a sick friend, she's in danger and on the run. She keeps a hidden greenhouse on the property, which she grows highly regulated magical plants. And she's an elf. Though stunned to witness magic at work and shocked to see that no one ever divulged the family's secret, Rose refuses to abandon the nursery until her great aunt is safely home. But as her and the agent are now awkward housemates, they try to keep their cover story to find the missing grower. They realize that whatever led Aunt Lily's disappearance might not be the only magical crime in progress. This sounds like such a fun time. It's kind of got this urban fantasy, but not urban because it's not city, but it's like real world fantasy, if that makes any sense. And this just seems like potentially a comedy of errors, which like kind of works for me usually. Then we have Odd and Ed by Shanti Leonard. This has 34 ratings and a 3.71 average. This one is actually tagged as horror on Goodreads, but again, Goodreads are user generated. They're not necessarily fantasy. And I think that this is definitely like a horror fantasy kind of genre blend. The cover is really intriguing in this very like minimalistic way. Kind of enjoying this one. It's called a suburban dark fantasy about a sister and a brother that bring the 1980s to life in a way that feels both new and familiar, which is intriguing to me. There are supernatural currents running through the town, and essentially, in a moment of desperation, Odd pressed the button set deep in the woods of the scare box and unknowingly pushed Ed's soul out of his body. So that's a very unique premise for sure. I'm very interested in this one. And the fact that it like takes place in the 1980s kind of gives like Stranger Things vibes, which I'm here for. Next up we have Stone Cold Alibi by W.B. Biggs, and this only has 8 ratings and an average of a 4.38. And this is like a fantasy noir, which is not something that I've read a lot of, but something that definitely interests me. The blurb on this says, step into a world where the lines between reality and supernatural blur in an electrifying new stone cold alibi. It's set in the heart of New Orleans. A chilling murder has rocked a local diner, thrusting Detective Joseph Seraph into a realm where angels, demons, and spirits intertwine with immortal lives. As the body count climbs and cryptic symbols point to an otherworldly presence, Detective Seraph embarks on a relentless quest to unmask a killer unlike any that he's encountered before. Here's the thing, when you say like angels and demons and spirits and things like that, that's a huge buzzword for me. I love books like that, so this one immediately caught my eye. The last one on my list is Courier Quest, and it says it's a cozy lit RPG, which is not something that I read a lot of. There was one lit RPG, I think, in a previous SPFBO that I read, and so but that's like beyond that. That is like the extent of my experience with that, but this one feels like a fun D&D quest. Trevor Anderson is just a normal, overworked retail worker. All he wants is his promised promotion, a chance to use some of his vacation days without feeling guilty about it, and time for his hobbies. While waiting patiently for his life to improve, a workplace accident changes everything for Trevor, including the world that he resides in. After he bungles his way through a summoner's questionnaire and gains the power of an extra-dimensional inventory, he lands in the peaceful town of Tosa. So maybe not D&D, maybe like just like a video game. That's what this feels like. In a world where he can finally relax, he finds himself both unable and unwilling to sit long enough to do it. With everything he needs to do to take destiny into his own hands, a clean slate, a supernatural ability, and good friends, Trevor will use his power to live the life the way he chooses. This is such a unique premise. It's definitely, like I said, not something that I have read much of. The cover just like kind of looks like a fun, cozy game. So I am really interested and excited at the chance to read something like this. Courier Quest has 265 ratings with an average of a 4.18. So definitely on the higher end of this and a pretty high rating. Okay, so those are the 10 books that I will be reading in the next month and a half or so to give Cassidy a semi-finalist so that she can read it and, you know, potentially choose a finalist. All of these are so different. They have there's a wide range here, from like cozy queer fantasy romance to a literary RPG and, you know, everything in between. Let me know which one of these 10 you are most excited to see my review on. Which one do you think that I will like? And if you're not feeling chatty, do a mushroom emoji. If you want to see my playlist from SPFBO 9, I have a couple of videos where I talked about it, so I'll link the playlist right here. That's all I have for you today. If you are new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little button that you can do so down below the video. If you'd like to hang out with me more, the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, Twitter, and my Patreon are linked in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!